During the summer months, the Herefordshire Mammal Group conduct many bat surveys, some of which are part of the Bats and Swifts in Churches project. I joined the group at Pembridge Church, which is found just north of Hereford. The church has considerable bat usage, and although very tolerant of this, Reverend Brenda Jacobs was very keen to get some advice and assistance from the group on how to deal with the bats in the future.
Hello, I'm Brenda Jacobs, I'm Rector of the Arravale Group of Parishes, and here we are at Pembridge Church, where we have got quite a problem with bats. We have got a church that gets very covered with bat droppings all over the children's area. The furniture is stained, my stall gets covered with them. A chandelier from the 18th century has been quite badly damaged by the urine from the bats. We occasionally have a bat come down as well, and all that goes with that. So really we've got a big problem, and it means that we can't use the church for worship in the way we'd like to. So we've asked the mammal group to come and help us have a look to see what species we've got, and to come and see whether there's anything they can do to help us. Obviously we care very much for God's world, and we want to look after the bats too, but we need to be able to use our building to worship in every possible sense.
It's not as though it's... I assumed when I came before and didn't look at the windows that it must have been sealed because there were no bat droppings.
So what have we got here tonight? We've got about 5 or 6 surveyors here tonight. We've already had a look around the building, asked all the relevant questions, and what we're going to do is we're going to be putting some remote bat detectors in and around the church and in the bell tower to see what the bat activity is going to be. We're going to have people positioned around the church to see if they can see any bats emerging from the roof or any of the cracks and crevices that we have within the church, in both the church tower and the church itself. We are a little bit limited on people, but as we've got the remote bat detectors, this should tell us if there's a lot of activity in a certain part of the church. The remote bat detectors will actually pick that up. We've also got some infrared cameras that we're going to be putting in the church to see whether we can actually see what the bats are doing when they're in the church, to see if we can see them commuting or whether they're just flying around, or whether they're having to come from their roost, come through the church, out of maybe an open window.
The group check out the interior of the church for bat droppings and possible roost sites.
This church is situated quite high up in an open area. There's not an awful lot of commuting lines. We do have the river to the north of us here. We have some shrubs and tree areas, but it's not a sort of, it's quite open, lawned grounds. We have a small churchyard as well, so it's very difficult to know how the bats are commuting and where they're commuting to. And as you can probably see, it's very windy here as well. Whether this is like this normally because of the positioning of this church, but obviously we still have bats in here, they're still using it. The numbers remains to be seen after tonight, once we've got everybody in place and see what the end of the survey brings and tells us.
An endoscope is used to see if the bats are using a wooden door and framework as a possible roost site or a possible exit point.
No, I mean there's no... It's hard to get a scale.
Multiple droppings are located in a part of the church. The church warden informs Denise that a baby bat had been discovered the previous day.
We left it. Did you spot it? No, we didn't. Anything special about it? I don't know. No, I didn't.
Incredibly, the bat was re-found and was still alive.
And this is the baby here, which does look like an Atterer's bat. And I'm just trying, it's not been born very long, and this baby I'm trying to take some kind of liquid. I don't think it's going to survive. It is still alive, but it's probably only been born probably yesterday. It may have been born. It's always difficult to know why babies are rejected by their mothers. She may have just dropped it. She may have been distracted and just dropped it, or it may have just fallen out the roost accidentally, or there may have been some kind of disturbance within the roost, which is the reason why this baby got dropped. She's hanging on to the paintbrush and probably taking the water, which it desperately needs some kind of fluids. Shame I haven't got any blooming. Come on. What we may do tonight, if there's anybody who comes with an umbrella, is to try and get this bat reunited with its mother. This baby is still small enough for the mother to carry, so fingers crossed, we're hoping that the mother will come down and collect this baby back. Mm-hmm. She's calling. You can hear the baby calling now.
The group attempt to reunite the baby bat with its mother. They carefully place the bat as close to the maternity roost as possible.
That's what I was going to say, put it on the ledge. Be better on the wall. If it falls, it'll fall on there.
Through the use of infrared cameras, it is possible to witness the incredible effort made by this baby bat as it slowly crawls back towards the roost site. Sadly, the group had to leave the church and were unable to confirm if the baby bat had reunited with its mother. We can only hope that it did. The Mammal Group will continue to support Pembridge Church and hopefully find them a solution to their bat problem. I was invited to join the Herefordshire Mammal Group on another survey, this time to study a very special species of bat. I'll let Denise Foster explain more.
Here we are again at Home Lacey House, which is a mansion which nestles in the Wye Valley. We're about 20 minutes from Ross on Wye and about 10 miles or probably less from Hereford. This magnificent mansion in beautiful grounds of restored gardens. We've got ponds, we've got some beautiful mature trees, and we've got some woodlands at the back, some fantastic habitat here. This mansion is now a hotel, and it has many visitors passing through. It also has other residents in here that live in the house. Not many people know about them, certainly the visitors don't, and they're lesser horseshoe bats. They're here every year. They've been coming here for a number of years. They arrive in May and they leave in around about September. And initially we thought they were living in the attic, but we have since found that they're probably more likely to be living in the basement area. And because this beautiful old mansion has loads of dumbwaiter shafts and many other shafts with old heating systems, we believe that the lesser horseshoe bats are actually commuting from the basement and travelling up through the shafts up into the attic area. And when they get to the attic area, these huge roof voids allows them to fly around and light sample. So they light sample going to the light or to the open window, which is left open for them by the hotel all year round. Lesser horseshoes need quite a large open access, hence the open window in the attic. They like uninterrupted flight. They're unlike our other bat species, the Vesta bats, where Vesta bats will actually land on a surface and using all fours will crawl into a crevice or a crack. The horseshoe bats are unable to do that because they have got an underdeveloped pelvic girdle, which doesn't allow them to manoeuvre in the same way as the Vespa bats. So they fly, when they come back into the roost, they will fly back through the open window and hang by their feet onto the ceilings. This particular roost we've got here is a maternity roost. We have around about between 150 and 175 bats here. Now, the females are quite fussy about when they choose their roost sites. It has to be the right conditions, so we're looking at the right temperature and the humidity. They do move from site to site depending on how warm or cold their roosts become. They will huddle together if it gets too cold, and if it gets too warm, they tend to start moving apart. As I mentioned earlier, we have two types of bats in the UK. We have two families, which are the Vespa bats and the horseshoe bats. And the horseshoe bats are very distinctive by their nose leaf that they have, which surrounds their nostrils. And this is how they echolocate. They echolocate through their nostrils. They also have very large ears, quite large ears, not as long as the brown long ears, but their ears actually they don't have a tragus, and when they hang up, they actually move quite a lot, so they're actually scanning their surroundings. And if you see a little horseshoe hanging up, you will also see it moving its body, and you'll see the ears twitching, so it's actually scanning to see what's around it. They actually will, when they exit the hotel of a night, they actually come down and they drop quite close to the floor. They're actually about 6 inches off the ground. They don't normally forage any more than 5 meters. They have very short wings, short broad wings, and what with this very sophisticated echolocation, they're very agile flyers, so they tend to be very good in very cluttered environments like woodlands. And when we saw them the last couple of weeks, they were actually disappearing into quite dense hedgerow when they were coming out of the hotel, dropping across the gravel track, and they literally were disappearing in the hedge, and the hedge was very, very dense. They will then go off into their foraging grounds, which I would assume is going to be the woodland, which sits just behind the hotel, because that's the kind of environment which they will be feeding in.
The Herefordshire Mammal Group were given permission to survey these bats on 3 separate evenings. This was to help gain knowledge on bat activity and bat numbers. I felt very privileged to be able to join the Mammal Group and film one of Britain's rarest bats.